Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment. This is my second podcast, and joining me today is my friend Mike. We're going to be talking Final Fantasy VII and the remake. How's it going, Mike?
How's it going, guy? How are you feeling? It's been a minute.
Yeah. So, what are your initial thoughts of the prospect of the remake happening? So this is years ago. We're going back a while.
So back at like the launch, maybe like early to mid life of the PS3, they released the video of Aerith speaking to the planet, and you had her walking out past the big Loveless poster, and everybody got super hype for a remake of Final Fantasy VII. And then we all got our hopes super dashed because it was just a proof of concept of the power of the PS3, which I mean, I could say that I was exceptionally disappointed as well. But then, a little bit later, maybe a year or so later, they announced that they were going to bring back the original team for Final Fantasy VII, and they were going to do a remake. And from that point forward, I was waiting on bated breath.
Yeah, I share your sentiments exactly. I saw that trailer and I was like, ooh, this is like happening next year. And it's like 10 years later or something like that. They finally followed through with it. What were your aspirations for it before, like when it was actually going to happen? What were your aspirations? And then what were your thoughts afterwards?
As like through development, I was really just expecting a graphical update, and maybe some side stuff, maybe an extra super boss, something like that, another weapon, diamond weapon or something.
So kind of what we got.
No, I was gonna say keep the ATB system. Like it would have been functionally the same game. We were gonna have the ATB system, level up materia the same way, same story run through, but just with a little bit extra. So the new one is more action adventure-y. It's more of an active battle. You're controlling your character within battle, moving them around the battlefield. I was expecting more static fights in the game.
I think the route they went works better for the market today. I don't think turn-based RPGs really sell. What do you think?
I think you're correct. I think there was a paradigm shift shortly after like Final Fantasy X, where you sort of did a little more with your characters after that, like starting with Final Fantasy X-2. You could beat that game with a rubber band wrapped around your controller if you really wanted, but you could actively control your characters in battle. There were games like Star Ocean where you could do that, Eternal Sonata where that started to become a standard. So I think what you said is correct. I think shifting to a more action adventure-y style of gameplay was the correct choice.
And when you first started up the remake, what were your thoughts and feelings?
I welled up in my heart, Steve. I was so excited watching Cloud jump off that train and then getting to ice those fools. And then experiencing the train station so much more. Like in that first scene, I actually played like the first 3 hours of the game or the first 3 hours of the original in preparation to do this podcast with you. And you jump off the train and you're right there at Shinra. But in remake, you jump off the train and there's a train station to explore, and there's little nods and Easter eggs all over. So it was so much nostalgia and then so much satisfaction that it's difficult to put into words. I was exceptionally satisfied.
So when I first started playing the remake, I I live in a row home, so my neighbors probably knew that I was happy about something because I was very loud. I actually like physically clapped because of how excited I was, and like each little beat that they did, that it's not an exact mirror of the original because I've recently started playing it too. I played it last night. A lot of surprises there, but we'll get to that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was ecstatic to play the remake. And then I like how it like eases you into the new stuff. I mean, yes, they do extrapolate on that opening scene where you're running through the train station, but there's they they add in a lot more that makes it a better story and a better game.
Uh, I agree. There were definitely additions moving forward out of that first sequence, like the first sequence, getting a handle of the controls, learning elemental abilities against the first boss, and realizing that the fights are going to be a little bit more difficult than they would be in the original, was really nice. But then experience in the game moving forward was really refreshing. Um, I don't know if you want me to jump into sort of the next segment of likes and dislikes, or if you have anything else to
Oh
say.
no, no, please go ahead.
I think one of the big things for me that I realized within my first maybe like 3 hours of playthrough was how fleshed out characters were. In the original, characters like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, they were just like the guy that opens the door, the girl that opens the door and gets her foot stuck, and then the fat guy. And in this game, there's so much more. Like they're dynamic characters. Jesse flirting with Cloud was like, do I want them to have a relationship? Is Cloud going to get him some? And then she exploring Jesse's home, sneaking through Jesse's home. Um, Backstory for Biggs uh, happening throughout the game. Learning more about Biggs when you get to Sector 5. Like, there's so much added to characters that were there and then lost, that you didn't really get any attempt to sort of feel anything for them. There was no emotional significance to the characters.
Right, which they I guess they wanted that in the original because they certainly have the main characters, especially Barrett, be upset about their deaths. But this time, not only are like the characters upset, but you're upset as well. I believe you mentioned to me outside of this podcast that you were audibly upset when the uh, the pillar fall section of the game was happening.
Yeah, when the plate fell and you watch the opening cutscenes and you see Biggs and Wedge and Jesse like struggling against the Shinra forces and all those robots. And as you climb the tower, you find Biggs and you have an emotional scene with him, and then he passes away, and then you have an emotional scene with Jesse, and then she passes away. And I forgot to mention that you do meet Biggs at the bottom of the tower, and he was able to get away safe. And you sort of see Wedge as this character that shuffled everybody along, and he helped save Sector 7. And that was another thing, that you saved Sector 7. You didn't save the place, but you saved the people.
Right.
Your story got split. You went up the tower as Cloud, and you went into the town as Aerith to save Marlene, but to ultimately aid people in escaping imminent doom, people that were definitely going to die. And that was a lot. Like, emotionally, that was a lot. Um, Especially sort of going back to extrapolating how they expanded things. Um, in the original Final Fantasy, there was the weapon guy, there was the item guy, and there was the materia guy, right? And you maybe talked to them once before you left Sector 7 for good. And in Remake, they added the like mercenary missions, the basically
Hmm.
the side quests. Um, and they were a blast, and they made me care about Sector 7. I spent extra time there. I met the people. I met Chadley, even though I hate that little weird kid. But with spending, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3 hours in Sector 7 gives you a personal attachment to it. This was the place you started your game. So to see it go away was visceral. Really.
Oh yeah. The fact that you spend so much time in the sector and with the people makes you want to save it all the more. Despite fact, if you played the game before, you know you're not going to save it, but it's just makes you fight all the more harder.
Mm-hmm.
As terms of dislikes, I know I've said I like what they're doing with Sephiroth, but I still also like the old way where he was far more of a mystery. He's more in your face and kind of a mystery in the remake. But I don't know. I like the more reveal in the original than I do in this one, because Sephiroth is like first 20 minutes of the game, like the first prolonged cutscene. When Cloud's going through the ruin after the first reactor, Sephiroth's there, taunting him, and it's exciting, but I still like the who is this guy aspect from the original.
I sort of feel the same, but I sort of have a counterpoint. So you and I both played Final Fantasy VII back in the heyday on the PS1. So, going through Shinra, going through the start of the game, watching Cloud get the headaches, you only ever read the name Sephiroth. And you found out that Sephiroth was disgustingly strong, and he could do as he pleased, and no one could stop him, and he was even the fear of the upper echelon of Shinra. And in this game, I feel like we're a little disassociated because we've played it before. And we know who Sephiroth is, and we know who's scary. So if you were to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that was, completely had no idea about this franchise, they had no clue about Sephiroth, they had no idea who he was, they would see, well, who's that silver-haired guy? Why does Cloud keep getting headaches? Why is Cloud so afraid? And why am I following him? Why does he always show up when the atmosphere wants me to be scared? I think what they did narratively was fine. But to sort of jump back where you're at, to stop playing the devil's advocate, I do agree. They did pull away a little bit of the mystery that was Sephiroth.
I think the route they go with him in this one, probably because he is a cultural icon, especially among video game nerds and anime people. I guess they were thinking this would, give them more is probably what they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It does work for this story because fundamentally it's the same story, but there's drastic differences, especially towards the end. But do you have any dislikes? I guess mine wasn't really a dislike, but just difference of opinions or something. But do you have any dislikes from the game?
I think my biggest dislike was with the side missions. I genuinely enjoyed them. I'm happy they were added, but I felt like during a lot of the side missions, particularly the one in Sector 5, where you have to go find the Angel of the Slums, I think that was her name. Your marker for the quest objective stays in the same place where you start, and I felt very what do I do? Where am I supposed to go? And I felt that more than once in one of the quests. I mean, I could very well just be bad, and that's totally fine. But I felt that more than once. Like, where do I go? What do I do?
No, I know exactly what you mean. You just reminded me that that is something I had a problem with. Like, can I just have one wayfinder for the quest I'm actually active on instead of being like, here's all these quests, and now figure out which one you need to actually go to. I mean, grant you could do all the quests simultaneously to a point,
Hmm.
but as if you wanted to prioritize it, they made it more difficult by having multiple wayfinders, and also the fact where the wayfinder wasn't necessarily where you need to go, but where you got the quest.
Hmm.
So that's probably the biggest fault of the game, and if that's the biggest fault of the game, that's a pretty good job.
Yeah, I had a little trouble with the map. I felt the map was a little difficult to use. Controls were small and sort of hidden. And I would have liked to have been able to add a player waypoint. So like I know where I want to go, or like if I go down a branching path, I want to be able to set where that branching path is so I can go back and navigate it easily.
Mm, yeah,
Um, but I mean, in that regard, the game did feel a little bit linear. Uh, but that's probably going to be a lot of people's complaint. But it follows a similar story to the original, so you can only branch out so much.
right. This first iteration of this remake is more of an extrapolation of the Midgar section than it is a new telling.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. So we both been kind of careful about not spoiling, but let's get into spoilers. So more specifically, the ending. We
Okay.
we we have contentious thoughts on this. I thought it was overblown. I would have been happy if they just ended it the way the original ended, going into maybe the next town over, where you just have the highway scene, you fight the big mech, and then that's basically it. Now they're enter they added in this new element of fate, and that's what all these whispers are. You see these hooded supernatural beings
The
that are
Dementors.
the whispers of fate, and they've been keeping the story in check until the last 20 minutes or so of the video game, and you actually beat fate. And I've grown to accept it because I've had similar contentions with other franchises, and I'm just the original is still there, so I don't have to worry about what this is doing. I can always, if I want the original, I can always go back to it. And so I don't. I think they overblew the ending, especially the fact that you fight Sephiroth. I I I thought it was too soon. Maybe have the scene where he's like, "You got 7 seconds. What are you going to do with it?" But I didn't need to fight Sephiroth. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the Sephiroth thing sort of goes back to what you said about the beginning of the game and Sephiroth being a fan favorite character. You wouldn't have satisfied fans if there was no interaction with Sephiroth at all. That wasn't a cutscene. Like I want to fight Sephiroth. I in Kingdom Hearts I completed the entire Colosseum because I wanted to fight Sephiroth. So Sephiroth is just that kind of character. Um, as far as changing fate at the end of the game, I'm actually pro what is going on. It's nice to see a different objective. Maybe characters survive. Maybe we make different sacrifices moving forward. Maybe we don't meet characters at all. Um, I'd be concerned about our direct goals moving forward because in seven we left Midgar with the sole goal of knowing that we had to stop Sephiroth, and then we're pulled in different directions in different ways. And given how sort of linear the game is at this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen when we can do so much all at once because there's so many optional things.
Um, So yeah, I share a similar concern. They did a little bit of back and forth in this game, but for the most part, it was the same scenario. For instance, you pointed out the pillar. You're not only Cloud, but you're also Aerith. Um, and in other, especially the part in Hojo's laboratory, you're uh, Tifa, and then you're Cloud. It's
Mhm.
but it's all in the same area. This can kind of lead into the next topic, speculating for the next game. Now that more than likely Zack's alive, which I'm not a fan of.
He's alive. He's alive.
That they could do this a few ways. Um, they could condense the whole Midgar section where you're playing as Zack with Cloud as a buddy, which would be pretty cool because then you're just kind of powering through all of that because they're both powerhouses.
Hmm.
Or they could have a whole separate thing where Zack is alive at the same time that they're exploring past fate, which would be interesting to see because one thing one thing that was added that doesn't really make any sense, but could make sense with Zack being alive, is the new soldier Roach, or he's in it for like maybe 30 minutes total, and he's never ever mentioned again. And I can only see them bringing him back for Zack because, to our knowledge, Roach never left Midgar. So that's how I see them like doing it, where you're Cloud and the team in the rest of the world, and then you're Zack in Midgar.
Okay. I'm sort of picking up what you're putting down. I would say, like, to pick up on story beats, sort of where you're at. It would be very cool to play as Zack, maybe for the first half of the game, because you're moving back through Midgar. But if we were to like really look at what was going on, um, when Zack passed in Crisis Core, I believe that there were still uh, 5-ish years before the start of Final Fantasy VII. So we could be in a position where we are moving through Midgar with Zack and Cloud, but you know Zack realizes that something's wrong. He's seeing the whispers too frequently. Maybe he shouldn't make contact with Aerith as much as he wants to. Like, he's a smart character. He's a dynamic character, and he was actually for the longest time the number one favorite Final Fantasy character out of everyone. So there's no way that they would let him go as well. So, but as far as like that, I'd like to see Zack and past Cloud moving forward, trying to sort out what happened with Shinra, trying to sort out what is happening with the slums, and then I want them to, leave Midgar in search of Aerith, in search of Cloud, and then if I could have like a perfect like Mike scenario, it would be in the first Final Fantasy. There's the scene where Cloud and Tifa fall into the life stream, and Cloud sort of pulls himself back together, brings back his old memories, and makes himself whole again. And I'd like to see that happen again, but with both Clouds. So you have this past Cloud that has all his memories and has all these complex emotions, like his shame for not becoming a soldier, who has his fear of characters like Sephiroth, and having those combine the two characters and be compounded.
I definitely see what you're talking about, but I would counter with they've already done that for Cloud. He is a whole person, which they kind of robbed. They completed the arc too soon. Uh, I I would definitely argue that by the end of this game, Cloud is Cloud that you see at the end of the original game. He's because you see him pass, even though it's like metaphorically pass. I mean, visually you see it pass. You see him pass Zack, but it's metaphorical because he's standing in the spot where he left Zack.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say he's more of a whole person. I mean, there's still development there because he's still afraid of Sephiroth. But I I think they completed the whole amnesia identity crisis within Cloud already, just based on my observation.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. That's a fair assumption. I don't know. I just want to go to the Golden Saucer and play some casino games.
But it sounds like you're more in favor of a split time um, time frame. Like you would be in favor of there being of playing two times. Two time periods: the past and then the present.
Yeah, I would like a section, you play as Cloud, you play as Zack, and then the whole party converges, and you have Zack in your party, or you know that who Zack is, you know that Zack is healthy, and maybe he scouts ahead, maybe he has another objective, but the player becomes more aware of him, and he actively assists you. Um, Also, the big thing I want, I want this so bad, is I still want Aerith to run off and pray to Holy to try to stop Meteor, and I still want Sephiroth to come down and go to stab her, but then I want Zack to just jump out and be like, "No way, cuz," and that would be exceptional. Like that would be the way to make the biggest change from the original.
Well, I that kind of that kind of doesn't work with your wanting to play two different time periods. Then,
No,
yeah, I think for the result you just um um you just can't think of the word. The result you put forward, the result that you would like, works better if Zack is in the same time frame as the rest of the team. It's just maybe he was in a coma or something. I don't know. It's just speculation, and maybe he starts his own team with Biggs and maybe some other people because Biggs is alive for reasons. Um, and then like the teams meet up at like maybe the middle or towards the end of the next iteration.
that's
And
that's what I want.
right,
I would like the first half of the game, like maybe let's say the first 2/3. You play a third of the game as Zack, establishing his backstory and why he's alive, like, and what he's been doing this whole time.
right.
You play the second third, as Cloud and the party leaving Midgar and sorting out the fate, going to see my boy Bugenhagen, who has the greatest name of all time, and then Aerith deciding that she needs to do something. And then the point in which Zack meets our party is rescuing Sephiroth. So we're establishing a story. Yeah. Yeah, he's rescuing Sephiroth now, I guess. I stand by what I said. Well, obviously rescuing Aerith. I think that would be a cool way to introduce him to the party.
And it would be a really cool way. And the fact that the next game, I mean, technically they already have cell phones, but the next part of the game is when you can use the cell phone to switch members out, which would make it really interesting because let's say they do go with your scenario where Zack comes in at the part where Aerith is supposed to die, and now you can switch Zack out for whoever, or even make him the team leader.
Mm-hmm.
But here's, I haven't read much on like what the development of this new franchise. But from what I have read, they want to keep the same storyline. Like they've said, like fundamentally, it's going to be the same story. We're just going to change things here and there and extrapolate. The ending of this game doesn't suggest that at all. So I mean, maybe there's a new article out saying what direction they want to go, or maybe they want to keep it ambiguous, which helps for sales.
Mm-hmm. I mean, sales is always going to be a driving factor. Square is a business after all, but they're in the business of selling us a really cool story, and I feel I don't know. I'm not disappointed. I don't think I would have cared if they just gave us original Final Fantasy VII all over again. Um, and I don't mind at all that the story is seeing transitions and changes. Um, and we're giving characters new meaning and new actions. Aerith feels much more significant now because
Hmm.
she's aware of what's happening. Um,
Her and Sephiroth.
her and Sephiroth.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
they're both they're both against fate,
mhm,
just in their own way.
yeah. Barrett feels so much more fleshed out.
Hmm.
I want to climb those stairs over and over again to hear Barrett wheeze and whine and realize that he has this soft side, and he's just not asterisks and at symbols and all that stuff
Right.
on the screen. Um, ultimately, that's I got what I wanted. Um, how the story moves forward, I don't care. I get to be those characters again. I get to watch Tifa dolphin kick someone in the face. I get to watch Barrett shoot somebody in the head. Like it's it's what I want. They could tell me that the next one's a Dance Dance Revolution simulator, and I would still buy it.
I wouldn't go that far. I go as far as like I'm ready to see what story they want to tell. Um, one thing one thing I am worried about is I first heard that this was only going to be a 3 game series because the original was 3 discs long, so it kind of makes sense they would just split it up that way. And then, but then I speculated before any of this happens, like, well, what if they do, or it would be really cool if the first game was Crisis Core, then like split up the original Final Fantasy into 2, 3 games, and then maybe make a game version of Advent Children.
Hmm.
Um, with the way they're telling the story now, Advent Children is no longer canon, which is interesting. Um, but now I've read that it's like possibly more than 4 or 5 games, and that some segments are going to be the equivalent of download content. They might be like 2, 3 hours long or something like that. Which, if that worries me that they want to stretch it out this much. Just my own observation and opinion of franchises that keep on going, the quality just degrades, and I'm not a fan of that. And I'm curious to see how much of the controls they change, if any. I would rather they don't, because it just makes it easier to pick up the game and go. But I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on future iterations, on just a, I guess, a business side, or like a from a fan's perspective, like hopes and fears.
When you go to editing, just right over my face, put that meme of Fry from Futurama that says "Shut up and take my money."
Okay.
Uh, business wise, there was some contention that the game was going to come out episodically, uh, and I don't mind at all. Um, again, it comes back to really being a fan and really feeling this game and how much you're invested in it. Um, I'm trying to give myself the correct thought. Um, Business wise, it makes total sense for the company. If they can stretch out the content to earn money, they should do it. That's how you increase shareholder value, right? As the fan, it could get stretched out. It could be thin. It could get boring after a while. But with the team that is working on the game, particularly Tetsuya Nomura, who's the director again, uh, I only foresee good things. Um, Cue the meme again. They can just have my money. I don't even care. If I had cash, I'd shake it. But I only have a debit card, and I'm not putting that up on a screen.
Smart move. The meme will suffice.
Thank you.
So where'd you get your start with Final Fantasy in general?
Final Fantasy in general. This is going to be a weird story. When the PS2 came out, I had a friend who had a PS1, and I always wanted one. And he was just like, "Well, I'll sell it to you for $50." And I was just like, "Okay." And I'm like, 12, $50. And then I talked to my mom about it. She was just like, "Well, here's $50. This will be for your birthday." So I went to his house and I was like, "Yeah, my mom gave me the money for my birthday to buy your PlayStation 1." And he was just like, "Oh, this is for your birthday?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And then he just gave it to me. He was
Nice.
just like, "You could just have this." And he gave me memory card, a controller with the dual analog, the good boys. And I realized, like, after getting home, I didn't have any games. So my dad came to visit me for my birthday, and we went to EB Games, and we were like just digging around, and in the bottom of EB Games' used bin was Final Fantasy VII.
Oh wow.
And I couldn't tell you why it was in there, but my dad looked at it, saw it was only like $15 or $20, and he was just like, "Is this all you want for your birthday?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And then I proceeded to sit in my room in the era of the PlayStation 2, playing PlayStation 1 and Final Fantasy VII for an entire summer.
Oh
I
nice.
I don't think I could emulate the power of that summer again. But that was the game that 7 really did get me into the game, and it was a used copy from the bottom of a bin. And that's it.
Oh, I have well, not a similar story, but Final Fantasy VII was my start into Final Fantasy. Um, I wasn't a fan at the time. I was about the same age, 12, 13, of the idea of turn base. It was alien to me because I grew up on games like Doom, completely different. But I didn't start with the PlayStation version. I started with the PC version, which came out about a year later.
Mhm.
My friend had it, and he burned me a copy when that was something that I guess you could still do, but that's just something you did when you were a kid because you didn't have money as a kid unless you had birthdays.
Mhm.
Um, and then once I started playing it, I just became obsessed with it. And because it was the PC version, you could mod it, which was really cool. So I put myself in God mode after the first runtime through because who wants to play it normally after you already beat it? You just want to smash things. And I never got to use it, but there was a skin where instead of Cloud, it was Sephiroth. The throw option in the battle system didn't work too well. It was just Sephiroth standing there, and it would like something would come out of him. But it was pretty. It would have been really cool to play through as Sephiroth. And from there, I was just interested in what other Final Fantasies were. Now, I should try FF8 out, but I didn't. When I was younger, I held to other people's opinion more than my own, so I never actually played 8. But I played 9 because it got good praise. And that made me want. And after playing 9, I decided let's try other ones. So I tried 6 and so on and so forth. Which other ones have you played? And where would you rank your favorite ones?
Probably. So it feels like a cop out, but it's going to be everybody's answer. Like 7 is number 1. 7 is what brought me in. 7 has the most dynamic story. It's the first game to really break away from the Final Fantasy like formula, the we have to get the elemental crystals and defeat the 4 elemental lords, like that kind of deal. It gave us it also broke the fantasy side, right? We were in a more modern, a more relatable society, at least as
Mm-hmm.
far as living in a city and futuristic tech. So number 1, Final Fantasy VII. Number 2 is definitely going to be Final Fantasy X. I have a copy. I have my memory card around here somewhere that has a maxed out timer in my Final Fantasy X. I loved that game. That was another summer that I just sank my whole life into Final Fantasy X and playing Blitzball. That was the jam. I don't know if you ever played 10, but
I did.
I probably spent like 25 hours just playing Blitzball. Not to just get Waka's sigil and crest and his ultimate weapon, but just because I put together a dope team and I needed to go all the way.
I I like 10, but I don't like 10 mostly because of the voice acting. Their first time through with, well, at least for the English voice acting, it just wasn't that great. But um, mine would be most certainly FF7, then 9. I really like 9. Um, surprisingly, um, when at least what I've seen on social media and sometimes in real life, some people say 8. Really surprising. Um,
Uh,
I need to try 8 to figure out why, but some people say 8.
one of my cousins, she and I shared a love of Final Fantasy growing up, and 8 is hands down her favorite. I never finished it. Um, I became relatively disassociated. I didn't like the junction function in that game. That rhymed. That was really cool. Um, I didn't care for it. So I just became disassociated and disinterested. But she plowed through it. She loved it. She would share the story and things with me. And quick sidebar about your favorite game, 9. Well, not favorite. I don't know. 9. I got a copy of 9. I got every single one of my Final Fantasies used. Um, and because I am a dum dum, I bought my used copy of Final Fantasy 9 back before like GameStop started just having the case in their used bin. You just go get the case and then they'd put the discs in.
Mm-hmm.
No. So I get home, throw in the first disc, play through it, throw in the second disc, play through it, get to the point on when you're on the airship and your team splits apart, regret that because everybody in the other team was super underleveled. So that was frustrating. So I went through the grind and they were like, please insert disc 3. And I flipped open the back. No disc 3.
Oh God.
I had disc 4. No disc 3. Didn't check. Never thought to check. So unfortunately, never finished that one either. That's one I regret not finishing.
I regrettably haven't finished 10, 9, or 6 because for whatever reason my team wasn't strong enough, or I just didn't put in the time or the well, I guess time to beat the final bosses. The final bosses in every one of those games, for whatever reason, I just could not get past. It's quite frustrating, even though I love the story.
Mhm.
And I wanted to touch back on 8 for a second. That's one of the reasons why I never played it, because there everyone that has bad criticisms about it said the gameplay is they didn't like the gameplay. I don't know how to articulate, put it into words how, mostly because I haven't played it. But it was the gameplay that deterred them and not necessarily the story. A lot of people like 8 because of the story.
Hmm. What I had said before, 8, a big portion of the game, in 7, you have materia, and that allows you to do magic and use abilities. In 8, you have what's called the junction system, and you basically take a summon and you junction them to your character, and that allows you to use spells and different abilities and things. So depending on who you have equipped to who decides what kind of things you're doing.
Mm.
Um, it was just confusing to me.
Yeah.
Uh, like I had said before, it was just something that I felt really disinterested over. Um, so I mean, play it. It's neat. Apparently, you can get super busted before the first mission, so it doesn't even matter.
Hmm. I can see now with that description of how it works, I can see the divide. FF7 is a very simplified system compared to um, how you described the 8 system. But again, the story is probably just equally as amazing as 7. And it's probably you're a fan of watching players on Twitch or just in general.
Hmm.
There's probably a playthrough of 8 where I could get it through that way. I don't see myself going out of the way to get a copy and play it for myself. But if I were to get into watching stories that I would like to learn and know about, 8 would be one of them.
I understand. I felt actually so most of my time, and probably why Final Fantasy VII is so nostalgic for me, is because I spent that whole summer playing it. Like I was a teenager, and I went to bed when the sun came up, and woke up when my family had dinner, and played Final Fantasy VII all night. So, and it was the same thing with 10 when I was in high school. Um, that was just the experience I had. Now that I'm an adult and I have a job and obligations, I find myself more and more detached from longer games. I've been playing a lot more, God of War. You can invest 20 hours in that game and experience most of it.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I have a friend who absolutely adores Mass Effect, and he streams. Check out twitch.tv_CM3_. He's currently streaming the Mass Effect games. Uh, I've always been interested in the story, but had little to no desire to actually play the game myself. So, sitting here with the stream up on my Xbox, getting to chat with my friend as he goes, getting to help him make decisions, it it was really cool. It is really cool. Um, but as far as I'm starting to see that the length of a game is really pulling away from whether or not the game has a really, really good story. Like how much time I have to invest versus how much I'm going to get out of it. And I feel like now, as I'm older, the the story isn't worth the time investment. I could read a book or watch a movie.
Have you ever played 12 or 13?
Um, I played 12. I was very disappointed. That was another thing where there was it the job board or the
Yeah,
checker whatever, that thing didn't make any sense. It was
yeah. I
um
personally tried to play it like 2 or 3 times. Maybe played 15. Well, no, 5, 10 hours. I
mhm,
just it's not working, and I went out of my way to get the collector's edition because I was just a Final Fantasy nut. So
mhm.
um, 13 was fun. 13 is when they were starting to get to the gameplay. I mean, 12 kind of. That was like a turn-based live action, but 13 is closer to what you would expect them to make now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a fun game. 15, I still playing. I put that on hold because of the remake.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also when those games came out, I was playing different kinds of RPGs. I invested a lot of time in World of Warcraft, so I was raiding. I was doing a whole bunch of different things, so I didn't have time for a Final Fantasy. It wasn't holding my attention because I was on that World of Warcraft, and I just needed to play all the time and get that fat loot. So other games in that time for me took a franchise. Also, sidebar, this turn made like a really depressing turn. I'm an adult now. I don't have enough time to play video games. I'm sad.
Well, I'm actually getting back into video games. So the PS4 I have, my friend gave to me because um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the game Death Stranding, but Death Stranding has or had a console version come out, and I guess he liked Death Stranding enough where he got that, so he also had a copy of Death Stranding, and he just gave me his PS4 and Death Stranding, which is a game I love to hate, but that's a whole nother topic. Um, but yeah, being an adult makes it more difficult to enjoy the games, and video games in particular, because of that whole job thing.
Yeah. And I think that sort of circling back to Final Fantasy VII, because we went on a really nice tangent. Um, I think that's why Final Fantasy VII sticks out in the minds and hearts of gamers everywhere, right? It was an adventure you took when you were young. It had these relatable characters. If there was a character that you could relate to, if you were unsure of yourself, you related to Cloud. If
Mm,
you were confident and strong, you related to Tifa. If you were aggressive but a softie, you related to Barrett. All these things that are super important in adolescence are are expressed there. You can attach yourself. And recently I just haven't felt that way. But I think that's the impact that Final Fantasy VII had on the community at large.
what's it like? Because you started playing the original again today. What's it like?
Really boring.
Really?
Yeah, I bought it for the PS4, and PS4 you can do, like, it has a couple like Game Shark codes built in. Like, you can do God mode, you can do 3 times speed, all this stuff like that. I tried to enjoy it for a couple hours, and the turn-based system, I just felt like I wasn't doing anything. I felt like I wasn't engaged in the game like I was in the remake. I wasn't actively moving my character around to parry and dodge attacks. I was picking from a list and then picking from another list. And
Yeah.
if I'm going to pick from a list, I want it to be the menu at McDonald's.
Yeah. I can definitely see if they went the turn-based route only with the remake. I think only fans like us would be getting it. I mean, maybe a few outliers, but they would start playing as like, this is the game everyone's talking about. It's like, yeah. Um, I didn't find it boring. I found it ridiculously easy. I was like, wow, I just played this for the remake, and I had a struggle, especially with the house. What's it called? I can't remember the name of the house, but the house that you have to fight in the tournament for the remake is just a regular monster in this one, and
Mhm.
you just breeze through it. And like all the bosses that I had to fight in the original, and I did it with a 4-hour time span, which took me about 40 hours to do. I haven't beaten Midgar yet, but it took me about 40 hours of doing the remake. It's astounding. It's an abridged, like the remake. I mean, the original feels like an abridged version of the remake. That's how fast you get through it.
Yeah, I agree. I would have liked to have Red 13 on my party
Instead of being a guest.
instead of being a guest. Also, fun fact about me, I didn't know Nomen Ruminals when I was a child, and I thought his name was Red 8. So I deleted his name and named him Red 8, only to find out that I was wrong. And I still carry that one with me. Oh.
Hi,
Steven.
Michael. I would say this is a good place to wrap up. How about you? Or do you have any more thoughts?
I think we're in decent shape. We did stray a little. I don't know how your editing is going to go, but it was a pleasure to sit and chat with you, and I'm super happy I found my webcam from 2012. So let's go.
My editing's pretty straightforward. I cut out any dead air, which there wasn't much here, so it's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to spend more time rendering the video than I am editing the video. But if you would like to find Mike on social media, you can find him on Twitter at Pope Mike, or you can find him on Instagram at Popadopoulos, correct?
Yeah, Popadopoulos.
Yes. Thank you for joining me, Mike.
Thank you, Steve.
Hope to do this again, another topic, or Final Fantasy again, who knows. But if you like what you saw, like it. If you think other people like it, share it. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.
Yeah.